I'm the lifestyle editor of Impakter. We're a sustainability platform dedicated to informing and empowering the public to live a sustainable lifestyle. So today, I'm joined by Sophie Slater. She's one of two founders of Birdsong, a London-based sustainable clothing line, creating wardrobe staples with a strong focus on ethical labor. Hi, Sophie. Thanks for joining us
today.
Hi,
Cara. Thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to speak to you.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about Birdsong and the idea for it and essentially how it started?
Yeah, sure. So I had quite an unconventional background into starting a business. I founded Birdsong in 2014 as a 23-year-old who was very idealistic, very optimistic and motivated by this desire to create fashion that didn't harm the environment, people or women. We're really lucky. I think we came at the right intersection where consumers started to think more about feminism, environmentalism, and also kind of diversity and representation in fashion. And that was definitely my experience. So before I started Birdsong, I was briefly signed to a modeling agency as a teenager. I worked at an infamous ethical retailer called American Apparel. And I also worked frontline with women's organisations and did a lot of feminist activism. So those three experiences really felt at odds with my love of clothes. And I'd also been really interested in workers' rights in my degree and was working frontline in women's organisations, seeing them really, really struggle for funding. At the same time, wanting to shop more ethically and sustainably as a consumer. And I thought, what if we did a fashion label that was a social enterprise that's core purpose was to create more revenue for talented women with incredible making skills here in London who otherwise face barriers to work and being paid fairly in the fashion industry.
Amazing. Okay, so you work with a lot of women's organizations. How did you build those relationships with them?
So I think, having a background working in women's charities, I kind of understood the purpose of what we were trying to do to convince charity partners, that we see that you're making beautiful things. Are you accessing the market? Are you sourcing as sustainably as possible? Are you communicating your social impact? Those are all things that we can do and take those off your plate so that you can just focus on supporting these women holistically. But a lot of it is, I think, I love people and my business partner loves people. We're not your regular fashion brand who just sends off like a spec of what we want and sends it to a factory. That's not what we do. We will draft up a design and then Susanna will go and sit with the women and sample with them, talk to them. Do you feel confident making this French seam? Do you hate doing ruffles? Is that a pain? We don't have to add that in. And it's more of a collaborative process.
So how many people do you have in your network? Imagine like those kinds of relationships you have to put a lot into that. Is there, how big is your group?
So we work with probably about 15 workers currently. It kind of goes up and down depending on demand, or, we had a huge network of knitters that we were working with and crocheters before the pandemic, but they're still not meeting publicly. So we've just worked with a few in their homes throughout lockdown. But yeah, it is really close knit. There's like 6 seamstresses, a shoemaker, our embroiderer who sometimes enlists like extra help, a few knitters, and we had a small group of screen printers that we need to find a kind of new location for. But it is super close knit. It's we're concentrated on the quality of life that we can give to our makers and the amount of wages we can give to them and living wage work. So we don't want to just suddenly expand beyond our means.
Right.
It means not creating really stable jobs for them. So yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about the design process and how that works?
Yeah, sure. So my business partner, Susanna, she's our head designer. She previously designed for People Tree. She did a 100% biodegradable collection for her graduate collection in 2013, I think it was. Back then, it was quite rare for anyone to be doing sustainability at their graduate collection. And she's really inspired by art and nature. We only do 2 collections a year because, we're a slow fashion brand. We want to, not waste anything and not be at that ridiculous kind of frenzied pace that the rest of the industry's in. So it's about really taking our time because her well-being is also a massive factor. We're designing 2 collections a year is definitely enough for the amount of love and effort that goes into them. But this print that I'm wearing, for example, I really love it. It's coming out in this colorway next year, early in 2022. But it's actually a patchwork of prints which Susanna's hand drawn.
Oh, wow.
And she does all the prints by hand herself as well, and then digitally kind of manipulates them and replicates them. And it's actually a series of different prints from our archive, some that we've released, some that never made it into production, because we've had this idea of like, you know, not wasting anything and not wasting ideas as well, which I love.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point as well, because I mean, essentially that's what drives fashion trends, right? Is the constant flow of like new and how do you source materials? Where do you go and what do you look for?
So we try and use as much possible reclaimed, organic and natural, or like, you know, certified organic, like environmentally friendly. We use reclaimed fabrics that are end of roll. So we've got a warehouse in East London that we go to, and we also work with Trade, who are a textiles recycling charity, and we source small runs of perfect, often designer offcuts like end of roll. We also use reclaimed leather in our shoes that would otherwise go to the landfill. And then all our t-shirts are organic cotton sourced from a factory that uses renewable energy and has a 90% carbon reduction in its footprint. And then for the bulk of our cut and sew collections, like this jacket that I'm wearing, we use Tencel. So that's made in a few different places and then printed in Lancashire in the UK, which is incredible because we can print really small runs and it's super close by, which means, again, no fabric is wasted. But we are also, you know, just kind of looking into more use of innovative fabrics. So we're going to do some research in the new year into fiber to fiber recycled textiles, and having conversations with like, you know, like vegetable leather companies. I think it's a really exciting landscape. So for next year, we are definitely going to be looking into more innovative fabrics, especially UK made fabrics, because especially with Brexit and you know, our carbon footprint from shipping like materials across the world, we want to try and create stuff that's as homegrown as possible.
Right. So a lot of brands are kind of jumping on the sustainability bandwagon, but it is a learning process, and there's so much about sustainability that still needs to be really defined and kind of filled in. So what are some of the key learnings from your own path to sustainability, and what are some of the future challenges that you anticipate? You spoke a little bit about the kinds of things that you have planned, but yeah, what's it going to look like?
I think for us, a massive challenge with sustainability is now differentiating ourselves, because everyone is talking about sustainability. Every brand, if you took them at face value, are acting on sustainability, and as such, it becomes more of a crowded kind of place. And you know, we're lower down in Google now with sustainability because everyone is talking about it. But whilst everyone's talking about it, emissions from fashion are only going up. Production is only going up. You know, 100 billion garments are made a year. We're using 10% of carbon emissions for the fashion industry. I say we, not Birdsong, because we're doing things like really small and like proper. But that's set to go up as well. So as much as brands are talking about sustainability, paying lip service to it, the biggest thing about sustainability is that it's contextual. So if you're using a sustainable fabric, but you're creating 5 billion units, that ceases to be sustainable. Right. And I think that for us is the big piece, educating consumers against all the greenwash fundamentally that's happening on the high street. And you know, taking it back to, you know, the values of small scale, thoughtful production, living wages, because I feel like that's the big elephant in the room with a lot of high street brands, is that nothing can be sustainable unless it's sustaining human life in a meaningful, dignified way as well. And at the minute, you know, we know that at least 93% of brands don't pay living wages. So we always take it back to those things. Volume, which is tied, you know, to so much, including waste, colonialism, carbon emissions, pollution, all that kind of stuff, and also living wages, because there is no sustainable planet without, you know, happy humans.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a sense that consumers have to be more discerning now that everyone's talking about sustainability. There's a lot of greenwashing, you're right, specifically in the fashion industry as well. Yeah, amazing. Okay, great. Well, it's lovely speaking to you.
Likewise.
Yeah, you can find Birdsong on eco.impakter.com as well as other sustainable fashion lines. Thank you so much, Sophie.